So our first session is Opportunity Begins with Digital Access. Today, access to the digital world is the foundation for opportunity. This panel will explore the current state of digital access in Philadelphia, where we're making progress, where gaps remain, and the coalitions working to close them. Experts will share what it will take to ensure all Philadelphians have the tools, infrastructure, and support needed to fully participate in and benefit from the digital economy. Our speakers include Kate Rivera, Executive Director of Technology at the Technology Learning Collaborative, Al Motley, Founder and CEO of Techademics, Marcus Hall, Director of Workforce Operations for PhilaWorks, Jonathan Latko, AVP of Business Operations for IT Services at Temple University, TU, and of course, Christopher Wink, my good friend and partner in a lot of good trouble, publisher and CEO of Technically. And now I'll hand it over to our moderator, Chris Wink, CEO of Technically, to get this panel started.
Well, thank you, Hania. Hello, friends. As we come up, I'll set you guys up for what our goal is. So we at Technically, we're a news organization. We've covered for 15 plus years the tech economy. And that often means who invents the stuff, who commercializes the stuff, the entrepreneurs, who builds the stuff, the technologists. There's also always this conversation of how do more people benefit from this stuff? That's like a big category of civics technology and access and equity. So we're gonna focus on that part of it, getting access and doing stuff with it. Can we do the say, why are you on this stage? Maybe give a little bit of the context of why you're on this stage, and we're gonna have a conversation. Let's go left to right, say hi. Why the heck did you get this great seat sitting here?
Thanks, Chris. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Al Motley, CEO of Techademics. I think I'm here because of my perspective and context of working in the education space and trying to imagine what the future of learning looks like with the context of what we have available now. And that's led me to looking at K through 12, higher ed, and workforce, and how the through line through it all. And that's really been helpful for me to understand what the floor is and what we need to strive for, but also what's possible as we keep innovating. So I'm happy to be here to talk through that experience and also what I'm seeing nationally and internationally in our work to benchmark how Philadelphia is doing as well. Thanks.
And good afternoon. My name is Kate Rivera. I'm the Executive Director of the Technology Learning Collaborative. So we are what's known as a digital equity coalition. So I always like to start by defining digital equity because folks don't always know really what you mean when you say that. I'd also say it's pretty synonymous with digital access, but just for helpful context for why I'm here and also what we'll be talking about. So essentially, when we talk about digital equity, the idea is that everyone has three things. One is a reliable, affordable internet connection at home. The second is a computer or other device that meets their needs. And the third is that they have the digital skills that they need in order to use those tools to accomplish whatever their goals are. And those goals can really range from really basics, needing to be able to look for a job or look for housing and stay safe on the internet without falling prey to scams, up to more advanced kind of workforce development, learning to code, things like that. And even, for older adults, sometimes it's just about being able to stay connected with their family and not be isolated. So it's a pretty broad range of kind of supports and different reasons why it's important for different people. But so my organization, Technology Learning Collaborative, or TLC, you'll hear me say, we are a digital equity coalition. So we don't provide direct services ourselves, but we support the ecosystem of organizations and individuals in the greater Philadelphia area who work on these issues. And so I've been working in this space for around 15 years now, which makes me feel a little bit old. But so that's why I'm here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcus Hall, Director for Workforce Operations for Philadelphia Works. If you're not familiar with Philadelphia Works is the local workforce investment board for Philadelphia County. What that means is that ultimately where funds are coming through federal funds, that includes WIOA and TANF, which is a temporary assistance for needy families, we are responsible for the fiscal and strategic oversight for where those funds get distributed. Included within that is the PA CareerLink American Job Centers, as well as youth investments for WIOA and TANF providers. I like to think that why I'm here is that ultimately the question of access. When we think about like the initiatives around this conversation and what we're focusing on, a lot of it has been making sure that we're getting computers and getting devices and technology in the hands of folks who need it. But ultimately, what happens practically when or if that happens? Are we ensuring that folks are able to actually access those devices, access the services, and what is the ultimate outcome of that level of engagement? When we're thinking about the CareerLink centers, we are engaging about 50 to 60,000 individuals over the course of any given year. It was not too long ago that digital access and being able to have laptops and those types of equipment was one of the largest barriers that were reported as part of engagement with the public workforce system. So as MOU partners, community-based organizations, employers, we're all collectively working to be able to amplify the workforce system so that it is able to be a support for everyone. But what does that actually mean when we're thinking about specific communities? What does it mean for immigrant populations? What does it mean for those who are returning home from incarceration? We're not necessarily having the same prescriptive mechanism and assuming that everyone is in the same position to access those resources, even though that is what our intention is. So for us to think strategically and intentionally about how do we ensure that not only someone gets access to the information or get access to the equipment, but actually has the tools to be able to utilize it to fulfill their goals is what I like to think why I'm here. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jonathan Latko, Temple University. I'll talk a little bit about the university itself. Go to you, first off. For anybody here is the Temple Owl. Give it up. So I'll go from that perspective first. So think about what Temple, why we're here, why Temple's here, right? We're talking about night owls. Anybody know why we're called the night owls? Why are we called the night owls? Because it was a night school, right, for people that were kind of blue collar, working during the day, and they wanted to expand their education, right? So if you look at that base, and it was only a night school, now we're a large multi-billion-dollar organization that sits in North Philadelphia, a major anchor, right? So when we look across, I've been at Temple 25 years, so when you look across the spectrum, we do a lot of education, right? There's a lot of jobs. We pay a lot of people to do a lot of things at the university. But in that time frame, from 99 until now, I would look across the spectrum and be like, wow, you can't get a job here unless you have access to a computer, have a resume, have an email. But many of those people in North Philadelphia and the surrounding communities, they didn't have that access early on. So when we move forward, we're like, all right, not just our students, but the entire community within Philadelphia, within North Philadelphia, how do we add that access and provide that access for them to have all the opportunities that Temple has? And then for me, as an employee there, working in IT with a broader view, how can I use some of, I'll call excess resources we have and get those closer to the community to help lift them up to get closer into Temple? And then, a successful Philadelphia is a successful Temple, which is a successful Comcast, right? I think we're all intertwined together. So it's kind of a broader view on it, but that's what I'm looking at.
You nailed it, Jonathan. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So led by One Philadelphia, Philly Tech Week, this 15th annual, 50 plus events happening throughout the city. Lots of cities now have a version of this thing, but they don't all look like Philly's. They're Startup Week, which are very geared toward tech-enabled startups. This week for 15 years has always had mix of entrepreneurship, mix of workforce, and always had impact of technology in community. So that's where we are what we're meant to do here is to set that foundation of access. But it's also been 15 years, and warning, Kate, I'm coming for you to start us off. I refuse to have the same conversation that we've had for 15 years. So let's first set up, have things progressed? We have done digital access events over 15 years at Philly Tech Week at the Free Library and HYY, and actually we've had it hosted at Temple. If you and I were having this conversation 15 years ago, would it be the same, or have we done something in this conversation over 15 years? Let's prove that we've done something, and we can look to the future from there. But Kate, have you done anything in the last 15 years of your career?
Well, Chris, I'd say we've done a lot.
All right, okay.
So I'll start, about 15 years ago or so. And, one of the metrics that's the easiest to track for our progress here is people who have internet access at home. This is a really fundamental piece. If you don't have internet at home, you're not going to have a computer at home. You're not going to have the skills to use those things because you're not using those things, right? So around 15 years ago, and this is a number that is tracked when they do the census, so we do have good data on it, around 40% of Philadelphia households did not have internet at home. There was a big effort, there was a big federal investment in digital equity work under the kind of Obama-era stimulus. We had over 50 different organizations in Philadelphia collaborating to create the Key Spots program. We set up computer labs throughout the city, provided over 15,000 Philadelphians with training on digital skills, helped over 5,000 people directly get connected to the internet. And then a few years later, around 2019, when they did another survey, we were up to 30% of Philadelphia households did not have internet. So 10% more, not 10% more because that's not how you do math, but it went to 30%. So there was progress there. And then COVID hit. And for a lot of folks, like I said, I've been doing this work for 15 years, but for a lot of folks, no one really thought about how important it was for everyone to have internet and computer and tools at home until we were all locked in our homes. And the only way to connect or get anything done was to go online. And so there was a big push to help folks get connected. The school district purchased thousands and thousands of Chromebooks and gave out Chromebooks to students to make sure they could learn from home, attend virtual school. And there was a big initiative, the PHL Connect Ed initiative, to make sure that those households also got internet access, big public-private multi-sector partnership. And in 2021, the city of Philadelphia commissioned a survey to see where we were at. And so this is kind of the latest data we have. We are down to about 16% of Philadelphia households do not have internet at home. So I think we've accomplished a few things, Chris. We still have more work to do. And I will also say, the digital divide, as folks here probably know, so I may be stating the obvious, but this really does impact our low-income households and our more disadvantaged communities more. So even though we're at about 16% for the whole city, when you look at families who are low income or older adults, or one of the survey looked at Spanish-speaking households, those populations are still at about 30% disconnected. So there's still work to be done. But the good news is that we have an incredible ecosystem of organizations. I said there were 50 organizations that all started collaborating about 15 years ago. A lot of them are still collaborating to this day. We have an incredible amount of knowledge and people infrastructure and physical infrastructure here in Philadelphia to address this issue. I will say that there has been more recent interest in funding this work at the federal level. The city of Philadelphia was recommended for a $12 million grant that would help to close a lot of these gaps. But right now, with everything that's going on with the federal government, that funding is now kind of on hold, may not be coming through, we don't know. So it is still an important time to make investments in this work so we can close that divide even further.
Beautiful. All right. Can I get other voices? What have we done in the past? Al, in education, talk to me a bit about what have we done, and we'll go to what we can do.
Yeah, I echo what was shared. There's been a lot of progress. I look at just the work in K-12 education in the last 15 years with using the federal E-rate program, and schools have been able to get high-speed internet almost at 100% in the case in Philadelphia, and you see that across the country. And while that's making great progress, then the schools may have some of the fastest internet in the community right now in Philadelphia, besides the businesses and the corporate community. So I think that's been tremendous progress to really center families and our younger students and at the heart of having access as well.
Maybe, John, you said you've been at this 25 years in some sense. Talk to me a little bit about how language has changed. I remember it was, digital divide introduced in the 90s, and that brought us to 2000. We've changed it a bit. And Kate alluded to it, that as we've progressed in you can get internet into your household, that was once the standard, the wires are out there. Then it became, all right, but do the households, have they connected to the wires? And then it was, do you know what to do once you have the wires? We've kept moving up. Maybe talk a little bit about, Jonathan, about that journey, and how do we both got to find the chances to say success while still pushing forward? Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I alluded to the tide is rising, right? And the tide, we had a mark, we had a direction. Don't want to say, mission accomplished, but that tide has risen where now more people are affected. So having access to those homes is a big deal, right? And you can't do this all nonprofit or government money. You need corporations to be involved, right? This is a business-driven economy, right? And they're here, and I'm not saying that because they're a sponsor, but having $15 a month internet, it's not free, but that's pretty good, right? And then we've been redefining what high speed means over time, right? Right or wrong, at 25%, 50% megabyte, whatever, the 75 now, right? So that tide continues to rise as the demands from the community had that ability to do so. So I think where we were, if we could take a snapshot then and take a snapshot now, yes, we're way beyond where we are. But now that they have that ability to plug into it, are they able to turn it on, right? That's kind of next level. Or now that it's turned on, do they have the device to access that? And then do they have the skills to do the things they need to do within there, right? Can they get online? And then cybersecurity, can they protect themselves? Right, so you kind of, you're moving through this continuum, and it continues to rise, and the demand is more and more. So I think if you look relative to the population and challenges worldwide, yeah, I think we're doing pretty good in that sense.
Marcus, I'm going to come to you in a second, because you obviously have a perspective on workforce. But maybe Jonathan, stay with you for a second. When we talked last, you can do comparisons to other big platforms. Energy, water, and there's a conversation there. One of the inherent differences you just touched on with internet connectivity is at some point we figured out this is what we define potable water as. And we have a lot of government scientists that tell us you can have this much in there, but at some point we say this is what potable water is, and that's a standard.
Right.
Internet, we keep kind of understandably, it's still a new platform in the historic sense. So we keep changing what we mean. So maybe just linger a little bit about what metaphor do you like? Yeah. And at some point we stop saying, if you don't know how to apply for a job, that's electricity's problem, right? Electricity gets you internet access, which gets you to be able to apply a job, but we don't really connect it in our brains as electricity access is job access, but we still connect internet connectivity to job access. Right. Just what's your favorite metaphor, and how do you use it right now?
I think you look at the median way back in time. And so, until we had the printing press, we didn't share books. Until Ben Franklin in this city created a library, you couldn't share those books, right? This is just the next level. Phones were that, in the 80s, it was probably phone conversations. People need a phone to live. They need a phone to do this, need a phone to do that. And we couldn't get into rural areas because the companies didn't want to invest in those long lines to get out there, but eventually they created universal access through phones, right? This is just a continual of the next level of access. So I think that's changed over time, and it goes back as far as we've been sharing information. I don't think it's limited to just the internet. I think it goes way beyond that.
For sure. All right, Marcus, talk a little bit about workforce. Why is Philadelphia Works as a workforce provider? What is its relationship to digital access, digital equity?
Well, I think that also, to the question before, one thing that we've been able to accomplish, I think, within the last 15 years is just making sure that this is an issue that reaches the mainstream, right? There's no debate right now about access to not only the technology, but also the skills needed to be able to utilize the technology is now at the forefront. There's digital equity plans. There are strategic advisements now on multiple different organizations and coalitions that Kate had referenced that now exist that's working in different communities to be able to uplift those communities for connectivity or just or key spots or just community hubs. So I think as the workforce board, our issue, or there was not enough public funds available to be able to move an entire system in one particular direction. I like to think of the workforce board as being responsible for really kind of shifting the conversation and hopefully in a direction that aligns with change, right? So part of that is if we're talking about that we need to have more folks able to be able to access desktops, tablets, computers at home, then we can use the infrastructure that's available through the public workforce system to make sure that that distribution happens, that there's digital navigation opportunities that are available within the career links or virtually that people can then access to be able to make sure they know what to do with those materials once they have them. So I think the public workforce system is not designed to be able to like solve all the problems, but we have been able to move in a direction that complements the efforts that are happening right now to increase the capacity of that change. So if you're able to have an organization that like PHL Connect Ed that is working to build like digital navigators or be able to like push them out to within the communities, well then the 833 line that exists within the public workforce system can serve as a navigation for folks to call in and wanting to know where can I go for the closest digital navigation spot. Where historically could I have gone for the nearest key spot? So I think the public workforce system really is there to help assist with like directing folks as to where to access those resources, and then complementing those that are ultimately working and helping as an evaluative tool so that we can build the capacity and really increase the access points for those programs that are working.
Can I add a workforce stat? So there's a national skills coalition, it's a national organization. They did a study recently, and they found that 90% of job postings in Pennsylvania, in our state, require some level of digital skills. So the workforce tie-in is so strong, and we all know like, oh, tech job, of course you need to have some kind of tech skills, right? But nowadays, even like very entry-level type positions that you would never think of as requiring technology skills do. And so that's just that's why digital equity is important for a lot of reasons, but the workforce tie-in is so strong, yeah.
And even to add to that, we know the World Economic Forum has really identified the types of skills that are needed for technology, digital equity that we're talking about, the most sought after skills right now. But as I was speaking to Nia a little bit earlier, we have high priority occupations, future impact occupations. You can go to the Philadelphia Works website and see recovery occupations. But what we have found is that because those positions are not lucrative to the standpoint in which they've reached the magnitude that we need from literally a purely quantitative standpoint. You don't find them being represented on many of these high priority occupations lists. So for our public workforce dollars and investments that have to be tied into those types of lists, it leaves us hamstrung because we have to invest within those occupations that are represented as part of those particular industries. And certain technology industries have absolutely been there, but you still have a large push for phlebotomy, healthcare, social assistance, education, which are still like driving most of the vacancies that exist within the local areas. So being able to have the public workforce be flexible enough to be able to make decisions about incoming industries and incoming occupations that may not be at the level right now that we know that they're going to be within 5 years is a flexibility that I think we need the system to have to better project where the investments really need to go based on what we know, even though it may not necessarily be reflected in today's data.
All right, that's homework. That was the foundation. It's where we are, where we've been. Let's try to find some place we disagree. Let's make it a little more interesting. Next step. I want to talk a bit about the future in a moment. Maybe let's first get to, do we think the gap is widening or closing in whatever we mean by digital equity? And I think, Kate, while you were speaking, I have this memory of, this is now pre-pandemic, but many years ago, hiring a teammate of ours, and like we were having some like productivity problems and couldn't figure it out. And I remember like sitting with this person and finding this person didn't really know how email worked. And I remember being like, oh shit, like that was like such a kind of like skills thing that like she didn't know how to search for an email. And that was not part of our own, we were 75 steps down from there. And that like will always stay with me of just a completely missing what we mean by digital skills. Because for a whole bunch of reasons, this was not even registering for me. Let's start with, do we think that we have over the last 5 years, has the gap between whatever you mean by digital equity from 2019, pre-pandemic era to today, has the gap, like the Gini coefficient of digital equity, digital skills, have we made it narrower or wider?
I think if we're lining ourselves off an old definition, we've made it narrower. But I think in the last 3 years, it's widening because of the introduction of consumer available AI tools. And to me, that's added a third dimension to this discussion in a world where we're so focused on infrastructure, access, devices. Now there's this whole component here where it's adding another element or a gap potential that can expand or contract. On one hand, I feel really good and excited about that as an individual, I could get access to an AI tool that costs millions and millions of dollars to build, and I can use those tools. But we're also seeing trends where now there's this access of, can I afford the premium tools and the newer models that are coming out, because they're coming out every 3 months, 6 months or so. And there's gonna be a gap there on access around how I can get the faster model, the most complex questions. Can I use the deep research AI tools? So to me, that feels like that needs to be the bar for digital access and equity, because that's where our baseline is, and from a competitive advantage as a city, as a country, and in different workplaces as well. So I think what we're seeing in some of the innovative think tanks and research are thinking about how they add that component and then raise that bar around AI tools or Web 3.0 tools and having that premium access. Because if I can't afford a GPT monthly prescription or a Gemini monthly prescription, then what am I missing? What am I not getting to? Versus just asking a prompt as well. So I think that's one piece. And the last piece I'll say is something you brought up is around my ability to personalize my context to the digital tools in this device and the fast internet and the AI tools. So who's helping me do that? And what resources are there to really streamline that and make it about me and my context, my family, and my community. And at that point, then it unlocks my potential, how I use those tools as well. So I think in those two areas, really going deeper on it, if we think the infrastructure pieces are taken care of or we're making progress there, could be another way we're rethinking and reimagining it.
I love that idea of narrowed by the definitions we had, but does the definition need to change? I think that's really interesting. Other thoughts? Have we widened or narrowed?
If I can, let's think about it from a real personal perspective. So, Digital Equity Plan said it came out ultimately 4 goals between devices, connectivity, ecosystem, and training and workforce. We have a mother, 3 kids in North Philly, is trying to ultimately complete her GED, may have recently been laid off from her work, all right? So in terms of access to the technology, that gap has narrowed, right? So she's probably bought a digital navigation program that might be available through a Title II organization, which is adult education. And maybe she lives in, like I said, she lives in North Philly. There's been a greater broadband access within that particular community. But now she has the equipment, but ultimately she needs to access the public workforce system, right? To be able to understand what opportunities are now available. So if we're thinking about training and workforce, how is she getting the training? How is she being prepared and making sure that she's acquiring the skills that are now needed within this current workforce? Well, there could be a digital navigation program or the digital navigators program, which was partially defunded, right? So that Title II agency just lost 2 of their navigators. So there's now not as many resources available to be able to help her with these devices to figure out what is it that you actually need to use these devices for to be able to do that. She comes and she's trying to get WIOA registered to be able to have access to those public workforce dollars. Well, okay, so if you're coming into the center, how many documents do you need to bring with you? So does the system now make it easier for her to be able to upload documents? That has not changed. You still ultimately probably have to come back 2 or 3 times before you get fully access within the public workforce system. So that gap has widened. So now we have AI, as Al mentioned, that has the capability of being able to read and dissect all legislation that's applying to WIOA, right? And you're able to assess which barriers, which MOU partners, which resources she can now access to be able to help her current situation. That is not currently available because of the price point, all right? Because that is not technologically available within the system. The systems itself were not built to be able to integrate these types of learning modules to be able to help this parent in her current situation. So she has access, she has the equipment, but in terms of helping her navigate that space, some of those resources have widened or are not even an opportunity for her within the current space.
I would argue again that I think progress raises the tide. And, you talk to a millennial, you talk to a young person today, and, what do they do? What's their focus? Their phone. And they can just about do everything on their phone. So if we look at access to those phones or access to systems, there was no Chat GPT at all 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So even a free version may not be the paid version, right? And there's going to be that gap, that paywall. I still think the tool and access to that tool is way better off than where we were, right? So I think you're raising the tide, that access is there. And all organizations have some sort of paywall where they give a free version of it. If you want to look at technology with phones, the iPhone 13 may be the free phone you get when you get a phone system, but that iPhone 13 is still 100 times more powerful than the phone that was 15 years ago, right? So it may be delayed a little bit, but I think the tide is rising pretty quickly. And to me, my wife's a school teacher. She's a reading specialist. And right, you need to teach a child to read by the time they're in 3rd grade. And once you can teach them to read, the world is their oyster, right? They can now begin to comprehend and go more complex. And they're even teaching kids to read even earlier now. We're trying to get everybody in preschool. So I think the children are getting younger. People are getting exposed to us at a younger age. It becomes ubiquitous, and they kind of grow up with the technology and they know anything different. So I think it's going to change. There are always going to be individuals, right, that either are left behind or you're going to have those stories, and we need to figure out how to close that gap. But I think overall, it's tremendously higher. The tide's way higher.
I'm going to make Chris happy by disagreeing slightly with Jonathan here. So I think this idea that because young people are growing up with technology, that they're good at using technology is true to an extent. But it's like they're good at using their cell phone, they're good at using, playing Minecraft, right? But they're actually, unless they're being taught in school how to use a keyboard, how to write an email, to Chris's earlier point, and how to, use a computer for, more like kind of office functions or even a job search. I mean, I've heard stories about teachers who have said they've had students argue with them, like, I've looked it up and such is a true fact, and it turns out that they're using like Chat GPT as a search engine and getting false information back and thinking that that's real information, right? So there's still a tremendous amount of education that needs to happen even for young people who we think of as digital natives in order to make sure that technology is going to be used for good, that it's going to allow them to accomplish their goals and not have them fall victim to scams or just not know how to use technology in order to get a job or accomplish whatever their goals are.
Thank you. All right, so let's go to I'll hold it. We got limited time. Why don't we do a optimistic, pessimistic take of what's coming for us, and let's do kind of maybe a lightning round, because you ushered in the word AI, and if you say it 2 more times, just it appears over our heads. So there's an optimistic and pessimistic view about what that moment does for a conversation on digital equity. Wharton's own Ethan Mollick, shout out his new book from last year, and his research on what he calls like the jagged edge of AI, that what's showing up in the job data is that there's just a real range in industry and job type about how effective what this class of artificial intelligence does. So if you're a high-performing sales team and you get AI, you radically run away with your low performers. There's a giant gap. But telecommuting jobs, it closes the gap between high performer and low performer. We're also seeing in census data that right now small firms and individuals are disproportionately using AI more than mid-sized firms. Typically, it's always large firms that deploy big technologies first. So right now, in the best data we have, AI does look a little different. That's not hyperbolic, that's just good, grounded research. AI is deploying a little bit differently than other big platforms. And it's possible in 5 to 7 years from now, that'll disappear and it will look like other platforms. Or it's possible it is different. And no one knows the answer to that, and that's kind of why it's fun or terrifying, depending on your stance. So, with that little setup, here's an optimistic view is that because there's tons of competition in the space, prices get bid down, and a free and low-cost AI tools are moderately available, and it closes some gap that individuals and people from different economic backgrounds can stay in the game. The pessimistic view is on Ethan Malick's jagged edge, some economic winners are going to run away with it, and everyone else is going to be economic losers. We have changed over the last 20 years of this conversation. It's no longer about, can you get $15 a month internet? You can. And we have okay programs, there's gaps, but not everyone has potable water in this country. So we're kind of close to where it means we're going to get to access. It's now all about skills and equity and understanding and what you do it with. So are you guys optimistic or pessimistic about what the next few years looks like for this moment? Artificial intelligence is part of it, but kind of economics generally play a role too. Optimistic, pessimistic, and why?
Well, I don't want to be a total downer, but I'm pretty pessimistic. Thumbs up or down? Yeah. I talked in the very beginning about how much progress we've made and what a great coalition of organizations we have working on digital equity in Philadelphia. So I'd love to be optimistic, but we have just seen historically that every time a new technology rolls out, folks who are lower income or have a disability or otherwise, are often the ones who are left behind. And so we have not done a great job as a society of making sure that we're reaching those folks and making sure the technology is working for them. And not to be political, but as I mentioned, we were going to be seeing federal funding across the country to support internet access and digital access. And now that funding is looking like it may not come through, or maybe a little bit of it will. It's still a little bit unclear, but we basically went from a couple of years of saying we're going to be having a historic investment in this work to now potentially facing a historic disinvestment in our nonprofit sector. And that's a little depressing, and I'm hoping that somebody else here can say something less depressing to end our panel.
I'll jump in. I'm optimistic, and I would even say excited. The most excited I've been in my career because of a few reasons, right? I think one, with all the things you said, which are so true about the context, this is actually one of the most, of all the different innovations that have come out in the internet and all these things and over the last 20 or 50 years, this is actually the most accessible about all of them. And two, the second thing I would say is that I think from an entrepreneur, the work I'm seeing entrepreneurs do within artificial intelligence and the time now and access, they're creating at such a faster rate, it's disrupting the way philanthropy moves, the way funding moves, and other objects as well. The last thing is I'm seeing an opportunity, even though education is chaos right now because things are happening from a federal governance perspective. This is the first time I'm seeing what people have wanted to develop from a technology perspective is possible now to build. There's AI tools coming out to help support your dyslexic, if you have ADHD, if you're a special needs student. And these things are such great innovations to help personalize learning for me from third grade all the way up to 60 years old. And I think that's going to unlock people in a different way that we've never experienced. Now, there are going to be other things to hold that back, but that's for the work that I've been seeing. It's really exciting to see that because I think it adds another element to the work as well.
I'll just say cautiously optimistic. Just two reasons. One, I can't sit up here just be responsible for allocating federal funds and be optimistic. That's just not our current reality. But I will say, but the optimistic aspect of it is like recently, I'll give you a very specific example. Last Tuesday, we released our C2L PHL platform, which is a youth application portal for summer work-based learning experiences for young people. We made this platform pretty much accessible mobile, completely accessible virtually, I should say, excuse me. And this was the quickest that we were able to get to 10,000 applications. It took us pretty much 9 days to get to 10,000 applications, which took, I believe, almost 4 weeks last year that we did this. So this was young people had access to the portal. It was, and the rates at which we were getting calls and like questions and concerns were minimal. So folks were literally accessing it and I won't say a good time, but like they went through a relatively easy time to be able to get a shot at a slot for a summer internship for this upcoming summer. This was new. This is the permanent fixture, and it's supposed to be here. It hopefully will outlive all of us in terms of just being able to have young people have their information, have access to opportunities not only for now, but also going forward, and ultimately connect them to their graduation and employment and training related goals that they may have. So I think that is a win for the system, and that is a win for our communities and a win for our young people.
I'm going to say optimistic. I think, look, concerning.
Why didn't you do a dramatic thumbs up then?
I'll get there. Look, losing federal funds when they're promised in some capacity sucks. It's not a good thing, right? You're depending on that money. You have ideas what you want to do with it. But we are a market economy. I expect the market to come in and swoop in behind and begin to figure these things out. Where there's opportunity, capital will move. Right, and I think there's opportunity in a lot of these areas, and it will continue to filter in. It takes time for markets to shift. When we talk about accessibility in the end, I think you look at ADA and things that have happened to ADA, especially in higher ed. Like early on, it was like Penn State got sued because they didn't provide an accommodation for a student. But then they said you have to close caption all your videos. You have to have pass across campus where that person can walk, where maybe they're deaf or they're hard of hearing. Well, all those additions help everybody because everybody's mode of learning is different, regardless of their disability or ability. So again, I think it raises the tide for everybody. I have a daughter with Down syndrome. We talked about this before. The amount of things she could do to watch TV, to use the Comcast voice remote, to go on an iPad is crazy. The things that she can do as an 8-year-old with Down syndrome is nuts. And it's like, I wasn't even doing that as an 8-year-old. It's pretty, so I think her ability and her quality of life that she gets to look forward to is way different than somebody in her position 40 years ago, right? And I think we have to look for those wins and continue to push. Are there challenges? Yes. Are there going to be issues? Yeah. Is there a dark side to all of us? Yes. But, as citizens and people, we need to stand up and say, this is right, this is wrong, and move forward with it. It's coming regardless. So my thumbs up, either you're going to embrace it and figure it out, or you're going to get ran over. I mean, that's it. It's coming.
Well said. That's a great way to close out our conversation. So that's kind of the foundation digital equity for the Spring Exchange. I know you'll be hearing this again, but I'll say it, 50+ events during this Philly Tech Week presented by Comcast, led by One Philadelphia. Go out to those events, and we at Technically, we're a news org. We cover these conversations. So if you don't already, technical.ly/subscribe. Thank you, friends. Thanks for the conversation. I think we're on to the next with Hania. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.